Hey everybody, I'm JJ. You're watching Reality Survival. So today I'm going to talk about 15 important things to do before you buy anything to start prepping. There's a lot of people out there who are getting involved in preparedness these days, and if you don't know a whole lot about what it means, prepping is disaster preparedness. That's what it means. And so you just want to try to be ready for any kind of disaster that's likely to happen in your area. And if you hop on YouTube and you start, searching out prepper videos, you're going to get a lot of, hey, you need to buy this thing and that thing and all that kind of stuff, And you really shouldn't start with buying anything. You really should start with doing some research, earnest research, actually trying to get a good idea of what kinds of things happen in your area on a fairly regular basis. And so that's what this video is going to be about, is what things should you do before you start buying? What kind of research should you do? What are some ideas to spur some thought, to kind of get you thinking about things, to help you develop plans to deal with the kinds of things that could happen in your area. So the first one is do some research and find out what sort of real emergencies happen in the region. So, for example, is it earthquakes or hurricanes or snowstorms, ice storms, forest fires, that kind of thing. I just got some notes here that I'm looking at, just so I hit them all. How good is the fire department? How many fires do they respond to per year? Just all those kinds of things that could affect, your livelihood and your ability, to survive and thrive. Number two is do some more research and identify the crime trends in your area. Study the demographics and develop a good idea of who lives where and what vehicles they drive in your neighborhood. Make it a point to physically, face-to-face, actually get out and talk to your neighbors, know your neighbors. That's a huge thing because in many instances, especially in a situation where we could be facing more and more civil unrest as the economy kind of, craps out and inflation goes higher, as people can't afford things with the money that they have, they will turn to crime. And so if you know your neighbors, if you've spoken to your neighbors, if you make friendships with them, they are much less likely to come and do bad things to your house or to rob from you or all those kinds of things. So it's just a really good idea to know your neighbors. And again, do some research to identify the crime trends in your area. What kind of crimes happen in your area on a regular basis? And you want to know that so that you can be able to kind of defend against those things and make your home a harder target and all that kind of stuff. Number three is conduct an audit of your personal finances and establish what your discretionary income is each month. If you don't live on a budget, you should. You should absolutely live on a budget every month so that you're in control of where your dollars are going and you know what your dollars are doing for you. If you just kind of get paid and you just kind of buy things and spend stuff out of it, you're not doing yourself any favors at all. So get a budget established and figure out what you have for income, what you've got, for bills going out, what you've got left over. And you need to know that thing because you don't want to start into prepping and get yourself into a worse financial situation. That kind of leads into number four, is establish what your discretionary income should be used, how much of it could be used for prepping and how much of it should be used for debt. And, I highly recommend Dave Ramsey's 7-step plan. If you have unwanted debt, which pretty much all debt is unwanted in my opinion, but, his plan works well. I've gotten out of debt several times using it. And maybe I didn't follow it correctly because I keep getting back in debt, but anyway, nobody's perfect. So what's the next one? Number 5 is conduct a physical fitness assessment. And you want to do this so that you can figure out how capable and fit you are. And if you know that, that's going to help you determine what sort of plans you can make to handle these disasters and stuff like that may happen in your area. That's going to help you make a determination of, maybe you should modify your physical training. Maybe maybe your aerobic fitness wasn't as good as you thought it was, and you need to work on that a little bit. Or maybe your fitness is fine, but I don't know, you get blisters if you walk a really long ways, and so you want to try to incorporate some sort of a vehicle into your bug out plan or something along those lines. It doesn't really, it's not to say that you have to be, a Superman, or you have to be in great shape or any of those kind of things. Obviously, the better shape that you're in, then that's a good thing for you overall, because you're going to be able to handle a wider variety of situations. But the main thing is functional fitness. If you start prepping and part of your plan is you're going to carry a 40-pound bug out bag, and you're going to walk up to a national forest somewhere that's 15 or 20 miles away, and you've never done that before, you might find out real quick that you're not capable of doing that, and that's going to set you up for failure. So just have an idea of what your fitness level is. How far can you walk? What is your pace, for a mile, those kinds of things. Just get a good idea of what you're actually physically capable of. All right. Number 6 is create a hard copy emergency binder or folder. I've talked about this quite a bit. I've got a downloadable file on my website, AmericanPreppingAcademy.com, and it'll give you a bunch of just recommendations of stuff that you could have in your emergency binder. But essentially what it is it's all of your important papers, your car titles, your insurance policies, your, whatever, bank account information, your marriage licenses, birth certificates, social security cards, all that jazz, as well as like phone numbers and addresses of, important people in your lives and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the second half of 6, is make sure you write down all of the names and numbers and addresses of all your friends, relatives, coworkers, or anybody that you think that you might need to get in contact with if cell phones don't work anymore. Because everybody has their cell phone, the numbers and stuff in their cell phones, but what would happen if for some reason that they didn't work, or your battery ran out, or whatever the case may be, then you might need to have it written down old style, All right, so number 7 is determine who in your circle of family and friends would be willing to host you and your family during an emergency situation. So just for example, let's say if a tornado hit your town, like recently happened in Kentucky, and your house was destroyed or whatever, who could you go and stay with until that got squared away? You want to make sure that you've got their names, phone numbers, addresses, and all that kind of stuff in your emergency folder as well. And maybe have them on a separate page that highlights them. Hey, they're willing to host, or whatever the case may be. And some family members might not be willing to do it, especially if you got a whole gaggle full of kids. They might not have enough space. It might not just be that they don't want to. It might be that they just don't have the space to do it too. So you kind of work that stuff out ahead of time and think about it. And obviously you would offer the same to them if they ever had an issue, that they could come and stay with you and that kind of thing too. So number 8 is identify multiple hotels in every cardinal direction from your city that are at least 100 miles or 2 hours drive from your home. And you want to put their addresses and phone numbers in your emergency folder as well. And the reason you do that is because step 1 might be, hey, we're going to have to go stay at the hotel for a few days, while we maybe, who knows what it is. If it was, say it was a toxic chemical release and it was going to blow over in a couple of days, and you just had to get out of the area because of a train derailment, upwind from you somewhere, or some random thing like that, then you've already got some places identified that are out of your regional area. Same thing with like a forest fire or something. My daughter lives out in Broomfield, Colorado. They just had an evacuation happen for a forest fire, and they had to leave for a few days. Luckily they had some family out there that they were also able to go and stay with. But the point is that if you didn't have a family member or somebody you could stay with, you could just go to these hotels. You've got their numbers already, identified. You've already, where the hotel is, that it's a nice hotel. You call them right up as soon as you see that there's an issue and get your reservations, and then head on out there and just stay there for the time. That's a whole lot better than grabbing a bug out bag and going out into the wilderness for no reason, So you want to try to be realistic about what your plans are, because even though in the prepper community we sometimes talk about real catastrophic things like EMPs and coronal mass ejections that knock down the power grid and stuff like that, those are kind of the worst case scenario, so they get discussed a lot. But what actually happens a whole lot is the more minor things that are regionally, kind of regionally affected. So anyway, yeah, write down, like 4 hotels, north, south, east, west, away, from your city. Put those in your emergency binder as well. Number 9 is identify multiple campgrounds and state or national parks that could be used as possible places to stay in an emergency as a last resort. You could also identify suitable pieces of, private land or large land that's owned by large corporations or banks or something like that. That could be used as sort of a last resort as well. You generally, don't want to be trespassing and that kind of thing, but perhaps if you could find who the landowners are and call and ask them, if you could camp there or something like that. I used to actually get permission to hunt deer by doing that. I would take a look at Google Maps, and I would find big stands of trees. And then I would go to that county's tax assessor site, and I would find out who owned it. And then I would go to the white pages on the internet, MSN white pages, and I would look up that person's name, see if I could find a phone number and call their landline. And I found several great hunting places like that, where the guy gave me a letter, another person, they didn't give me the letter or anything, but they said I was, more than willing to hunt there, or more than welcome to hunt there and all that kind of stuff. So, you can do those kinds of things ahead of time, and that'll save you a little bit of heartache, because it kind of gives you an idea of where you can go if there were a problem, and or say, if it was like a hurricane or something like that and all the hotels were sold out and you didn't have any choice, you had to go camp somewhere, then you could go do that. Okay, so, because it's bad to have to figure this stuff out on the cuff, when there's not, or it's bad to figure it out like in the midst of the problem. So if you establish these things ahead of time, it just makes your life a whole lot easier, rather than having to figure it out when you got all the stress of all the crap happening at the same time, and you're like, oh God, what do we do now? If you've got some alternatives worked out, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, your PACE plan, then you've got some options for yourself. Okay. Number 10 is map out multiple routes out of town on a hard copy map. The gazetteer maps work pretty good. There's other ones that have like the trifold laminates. Those work okay too. But you want to kind of focus on like a secondary and tertiary roadways. Try to avoid the main highways when you do this. Because a lot of times if it's a really bad situation, those highways can get clogged up. And so look for those back roads to get out there. If you're worried about OPSEC, you can take tracing paper and put it over the top of it, and you can do it that way. But honestly, that's probably not necessary. That's probably a little tinfoil hatted that would be required. Number 11 is study the geography around your residence. And you want to know where the freshwater sources are, where the streams are, where the lakes are, where the rivers are, where the railroad tracks go, the high tension power lines, large stands of trees and woods, parks, all that kind of stuff. Know your immediate area. if you needed to be able to go get water and stuff like that, do you know where you would go from your house? If you couldn't use what was in the pipes for whatever weird reason, and you had to go get water yourself, where would you go? That's kind of the idea behind this one, to kind of know what's around you. All right, number 12 is war game, multiple emergency scenarios, and write out just some bullet pointed plans, some really kind of simple plans for what you would do as like an action plan for you and your family members to do in case you have that emergency. And so, maybe as an example, what are we going to do if there's a tornado? Okay, well, step 1, we're going to the basement. Step 2, whatever, just kind of list out those things. What do we do if there's a forest fire? And I've got some checklists for these over on my website, AmericanPreppingAcademy.com. You can download those checklists. There's several. I think there's hurricane and blizzard, forest fires, house fire. I don't know. There's several of them over there. I'm still adding to it all the time. Okay. Number 13 is establish a family communication plan that covers how to get in touch with each other if your cell phones don't work. And, that could include things like rally points, meeting schedules. I've got a whole lesson on this on the website. You can go check that out if you want. And make sure that each family member has a nice little small business card sized copy of that plan that they can keep with them, in their wallet or in their purse or whatever. And you could keep the master copy of that in your emergency binder. Okay. Number 14 is conduct an assessment of your family's skills. Who can operate a firearm? Who has tactical or security experience? Who can cook? Who can hunt, trap? Who can, run a garden? Who can carry the backpack, and how much weight can they carry for how many miles? Talking about that fitness assessment we were talking about. Who can start a fire? Who knows first aid? Who knows how to find and treat drinking water? Who's good at carpentry? Who knows how to use radios? Who knows how to build a shelter? Who can sew clothes? Who can repair items? What special skills does any family member have? And you want to do all those things because that's going to help you be able to know who plays what role in the different plans that you come up with that we talked about a little bit earlier. So you can kind of assign those things ahead of time so that they have an idea of what they'll be responsible to do and all that kind of stuff. Number 15 is discuss and write down your core values. Now, the reason that's important, I think, is like, what are the things that are really important to you as a person and as a family that you kind of follow, your moral standards, your core values, your whatever you want to call them, because in times of emergency, sometimes you can lose sight of those things. And if you have something you can refer back to, that will maybe kind of keep you, on the straight and narrow. And I think it's probably less important for persons of faith to do that than it is for persons that who don't have a faith that they believe in. That maybe not. I don't know. Generally speaking, if you're a Christian or something like that, then those values are going to be kind of how you guide your life or whatever. But I don't know. It's just something to think about there. So anyway, that is it. That is the 15th there. And then once that's done, then, you go those things. That's going to give you a good idea of what should we realistically prepare for, and what do those plans look like. And you kind of put out those plans and you kind of write out some just bullet points of the things that you want to do. And then you can kind of take a look at all those and look at, okay, this one's the most likely to happen. This one's a little less likely. This one's even, it only happens every 5 years or something in this area or whatever. It's even less likely. And then you can start to create, the way that you're going to go about looking for what gear and stuff that you need, or what training that you need to take based off of those lists. Okay. And I've done a series of videos. I think it was 4 or 5 videos. It was like the first 5 things that you should buy to begin prepping or something along those lines. And you guys could check out those videos if you want, just to give you an idea of kind of where to start and just kind of some generic things. But really, it's determined off of your situation and where you live and what happens in your area, that you can't really get that from YouTube. You know, you kind of really need to look at your own situation individually and make your own plans there. So anyway, guys, I hope that's been helpful. Before I let you go here, I want to just invite you to go over to the website, AmericanPreppingAcademy.com, and sign up for the email list over there. That way, if and when YouTube cancels the channel, then you guys I'll still be able to get in touch with you and still be able to send out, you know, new blog posts and or videos, or, you know, maybe special deals that I come across or something along those lines. I don't ever sell that information. I'll keep that just between you and me, and yeah, I think that would be really cool if you'd do that. So anyway, thanks for watching, and don't forget to live 6 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.